Two ruthless men, one dark underground garage. Have you ever been completely trapped, with everything you fought for about to be violently stolen away? For Chloe, a young woman in a wheelchair, that terrifying nightmare became real. She thought she was entirely alone, but the predators hiding in the shadows made one massive mistake. They did not notice the highly trained Navy SEAL and his 90-pound combat dog watching them from the dark. 3 hours before the police sirens wailed, a desperate battle for survival began. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments which country you are watching from. And if you love stories that melt your heart, please subscribe to support our channel. The glass doors of the Dallas First National Bank closed silently behind Chloe. She adjusted her grip on the metal rims of her manual wheelchair. Chloe was a 24-year-old woman with shoulder-length brown hair and a pale face that usually carried a look of quiet determination. Today, she wore a simple blue sweater and dark jeans. Her legs rested motionless on the black footplates of her chair. Inside her brown leather handbag sat the most important thing in her world. A thick manila envelope contained the entire cash balance she needed for her upcoming spinal surgery. She pushed the wheels forward. The rubber tires rolled smoothly over the polished marble floor of the bank lobby. She headed toward the rear exit. The air conditioning hummed softly above her. Chloe felt the heavy weight of the bag on her lap. That bag held her freedom. For 2 years, she had relied entirely on this chair. A severe car accident had taken her mobility, but she absolutely refused to let it take her future. 10 minutes earlier, the bank manager had asked her 3 times if she was absolutely sure about making such a massive cash withdrawal. She had insisted firmly. The specialized surgical clinic required a cash deposit by tomorrow morning to secure the elite medical team. They did not accept standard wire transfers from her specific trust account due to recent legal disputes. She reached the private staff elevator. Only premium clients and bank executives used this route to access the secure underground parking garage. She pressed the down button with a gloved finger. The polished metal doors slid open immediately. Chloe rolled inside, spun her chair around with practiced ease, and pressed the button for level P3. As the elevator descended, Chloe thought about Arthur. Her Uncle Arthur was a tall man in his late 50s with thinning gray hair, expensive suits, and cold, calculating eyes. After her parents passed away, Arthur took absolute control of the family trust fund. He scrutinized every single medical bill. He questioned every physical therapy session. When she finally found this new experimental surgery in Europe, Arthur flatly refused to approve the fund transfer. He claimed it was a complete waste of money and an unnecessary risk. Chloe knew the real reason. He wanted her dependent. He wanted absolute control over the estate. But Chloe had fought back. She spent months finding a legal loophole. She managed to bypass his authorization and liquidated a separate personal emergency account left directly to her by her mother. She won the battle. The money was finally hers. The elevator dinged sharply. The metal doors opened to level P3. A wave of cool, damp air hit her face instantly. The underground garage smelled strongly of exhaust fumes and old motor oil. It was a massive cavern of poured concrete. Thick gray pillars stretched into the far distance. Faded yellow lines marked the empty parking spaces. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered violently. Several bulbs were completely burnt out. This left large pools of heavy darkness between the rows of parked cars. At this hour on a Tuesday afternoon, the VIP parking level was nearly deserted. Chloe pushed her wheels forward onto the rough concrete. Her customized van was parked in a designated handicap space about 50 yards away. The rhythmic squeak of her rubber tires echoed loudly off the bare walls. She kept her handbag tightly secured across her chest. The leather strap dug deep into her shoulder. She maintained a steady, familiar rhythm. Push, glide, push, glide. Her arm muscles flexed under her blue sweater. The silence of the massive garage felt terribly heavy. Usually she enjoyed quiet places. Today, the silence felt very different. It felt oppressive. It felt wrong. She passed a massive concrete pillar. A sudden sound broke the dead silence. Scuff. Chloe stopped her wheelchair immediately. She held her breath and listened hard. The sound was distinct. It was the harsh scrape of a heavy boot against the concrete floor. It did not sound like a hollow echo of her own movement. She turned her head slowly to the right. A large, dark SUV sat parked in the deep shadows. Nothing moved behind the vehicle. "Hello?" Chloe called out. Her voice sounded incredibly small and weak in the vast, empty space. Nobody answered. She shook her head and exhaled. She told herself she was just being paranoid. Carrying a large amount of cash naturally made people nervous. She gripped the metal rims of her wheels again and pushed forward with renewed force. Her arms worked much harder now. She desperately wanted to reach her van quickly. Scuff, step, there it was again. The sound was much closer this time. Chloe snapped her head over her left shoulder. The flickering overhead light briefly illuminated a row of empty cars. She saw a shadow detach itself from a concrete pillar. It was a man. He wore a dark, baggy hoodie pulled up completely over his head to hide his face. Chloe felt her heart hammer violently against her ribs. She pushed her wheels faster. Her arms strained with every rotation. The customized white van was only 20 yards away now. She just needed to reach the remote control on her keychain to deploy the automatic ramp and unlock the doors. She reached blindly into her coat pocket with one hand while pushing the right wheel with the other. The chair veered slightly off course. She quickly grabbed both wheels to correct her path. Another sound came from directly in front of her. Heavy footsteps, fast and aggressive. She looked forward. A second man stepped out from behind a thick concrete column. He stood directly in the middle of the driving lane, completely blocking her path to the van. He wore a black leather jacket and a dark baseball cap pulled very low over his eyes. He had a thick, muscular build and stood with his feet planted wide on the concrete. Chloe hit the brakes hard. The wheelchair skidded to an abrupt halt. The rubber tires squealed loudly against the painted concrete floor. She looked back in panic. The first man in the dark hoodie was walking steadily toward her. He was purposely cutting off her retreat back to the safety of the elevator. She was completely trapped between them. The muscular man in the front took a slow step closer. He did not look at her face. He looked directly down at the brown leather handbag resting securely on her lap. "Nice and easy, little lady," the man in the front said. His voice was incredibly rough and low, echoing slightly in the empty garage. Chloe gripped the padded armrests of her chair. Her knuckles instantly turned white. The cold, terrifying reality of the situation crashed over her in a freezing wave. They knew she had the cash. They had been waiting for her down here. The shadows of the underground garage seemed to close in tightly around her. The bright hope of her upcoming surgery, the precious chance to finally walk again, was suddenly slipping away in the damp darkness of level P3. The muscular man stepped much closer to the front of the wheelchair. He had a thick neck and a jagged scar running along his jawline. His dark eyes locked directly onto the brown leather handbag resting on Chloe's lap. He stood with his feet planted wide on the concrete floor, completely blocking her path to the customized white van. "Hand it over," the muscular man said. His voice echoed harshly off the cold concrete walls. Chloe tightened her grip on the bag. She pressed it firmly against her chest. "Get away from me." The tall, thin man in the dark hoodie moved up closely behind her chair. He chuckled. It was a dry, nervous sound that echoed in the empty parking garage. "She thinks she has a choice. That is really cute." Chloe looked frantically left and right. The massive concrete pillars offered absolutely no escape route. Her white van sat 20 yards away. Right now, it felt like 20 miles. She calculated the distance in her head. She measured the angle of her wheels. She quickly realized she had zero chance of outrunning them in a manual wheelchair. "I said, hand over the bag," the muscular man repeated. He took another heavy step forward. His thick boots scraped loudly against the floor. "We already know exactly what is in it. Do not make this hard for yourself." Chloe shook her head rapidly. "No, please. You do not understand. I need this money. It is for a surgery." "We all need things," the thin man said from behind her. He suddenly kicked the back tire of her wheelchair with his boot. The sudden, violent jolt sent a sharp pain shooting up Chloe's damaged spine. She gasped loudly and grabbed the padded armrest to steady herself. "Do not touch me," Chloe yelled. Her voice carried a mix of pure fear and intense anger. The muscular man laughed loudly. It was a cruel, hollow sound that filled the dark space. "Or what? You are going to run away from us? You are going to stand up and fight?" He pointed a thick finger directly at her motionless legs. "You are permanently stuck in that chair. You cannot do anything to stop us. Give me the cash right now." On the opposite side of level P3, exactly 50 yards away, Marvin stopped walking. Marvin was an active-duty Navy SEAL currently on 2 weeks of leave. He was 32 years old with a tall, highly athletic build. He had short, dark hair and wore a gray tactical jacket over a simple black shirt and dark denim jeans. Beside him walked Titan. Titan was a 90-pound German shepherd. He had thick black and tan fur, alert pointed ears, and highly intelligent brown eyes. Titan did not walk like a normal house pet. He moved with the strict, disciplined focus of a highly trained military working dog. He stayed perfectly aligned with Marvin's left leg at all times. Marvin had come to the bank earlier to deposit a check. He always parked his large truck down on the lowest level because he preferred the quiet isolation. But right now, the quiet isolation felt entirely wrong. Years of dangerous combat deployments in hostile territories had fine-tuned his survival instincts. He felt a distinct, sudden shift in the atmosphere of the underground garage. The cold air felt heavy. He stopped near a thick concrete column and listened carefully. Titan stopped instantly. The dog sat down on the cold floor without receiving a single verbal command. Titan tilted his large head. His ears swiveled like radar dishes catching a signal. Marvin heard a faint voice echoing through the vast space. It was a male voice, rough and very demanding. Then he heard a woman yell in distress, "Do not touch me!" The pure panic in the woman's voice cut sharply through the damp air. Marvin felt his pulse steady. His advanced military training instantly took over his brain. His posture shifted from relaxed civilian to fully alert soldier. His sharp eyes scanned the dark rows of parked cars. He located the exact source of the sound. It came from the VIP parking section. Marvin looked down at Titan. He gave a sharp, silent hand signal. Titan stood up immediately. The dog's powerful muscles tensed under his dark fur. "Quiet," Marvin whispered. They moved out of the stairwell alcove together. Marvin stayed very low and used the parked vehicles for cover. He moved silently, placing his boots carefully to avoid making any scraping sounds on the concrete. Titan mirrored his master's movements perfectly. The dog's padded paws made absolutely zero noise on the ground. The situation near the white van grew significantly worse. The muscular man grew tired of waiting. He stepped right up to the front footplates of Chloe's wheelchair. He reached out aggressively and grabbed the thick leather strap of her handbag. Chloe reacted purely on adrenaline and instinct. She leaned her upper body back and pulled the bag fiercely against her chest. Her knuckles ached from the intense pulling force. "Let go of it!" Chloe screamed. The thin man stepped around to the left side of the chair. He reached out and grabbed Chloe's left shoulder. His long fingers dug painfully deep into her blue sweater. "Stop screaming right now," the thin man hissed in her ear. Chloe thrashed her upper body wildly. She swung her right arm and struck the muscular man's hand. It was a relatively weak hit, but it surprised him just enough to make him loosen his grip for one single second. Chloe yanked the bag back into her lap. The muscular man's face twisted in violent anger. The cruel mockery completely vanished from his dark eyes. Pure, unhidden aggression replaced it. "You stupid girl," he growled. He lunged forward again. He did not try to grab the bag this time. Instead, he grabbed both of the padded armrests on the wheelchair. He possessed immense physical strength. With a loud grunt, he lifted the front wheels entirely off the concrete ground. Chloe screamed in absolute terror. She felt the heavy chair tilt sharply backward. Gravity pulled her body down. She had zero core strength to stabilize herself. The dark garage ceiling spun wildly above her head. The muscular man held the heavy chair securely at a steep angle. He looked down at her pale face with a vicious, satisfied grin. "Give me the cash right now, or I drop you right on your head," he threatened loudly. Chloe squeezed her eyes shut. She held onto the brown bag with everything she had left. This money was her only chance to walk again. She prepared herself for the brutal impact of the concrete floor. Marvin reached the edge of the VIP section just in time to see the man lift the wheelchair. He saw the terrified woman clinging desperately to a brown bag. He saw the second attacker holding her shoulder. Two large men against one disabled woman. Marvin did not shout a warning. He did not announce his presence to the attackers. He simply evaluated the threat level in a fraction of a second. The two men were focused entirely on the vulnerable woman in the chair. They had no idea anyone else was in the garage. Marvin unclipped the heavy metal clasp connecting Titan's leash to his collar. He kept his hand firmly resting on the dog's neck. Titan felt the extreme tension. The dog let out a very low, barely audible growl. He stared intensely at the two men. Marvin noted the muscular man reaching into his leather jacket with his free hand. He recognized the dangerous body language. The attacker was preparing to draw a weapon. The timeline had just accelerated. Marvin knew he had to strike immediately. He released his tight grip on Titan's collar. The concrete floor of the underground garage felt incredibly close as the muscular man held Chloe suspended in the air. The front wheels of her chair spun uselessly. Gravity fought against her. Her hands gripped the brown leather bag with a desperate, white-knuckled strength. She knew exactly what would happen if she let go. She would lose her surgery. She would lose her independence. She would lose to Arthur. "Let me down right now," Chloe screamed. Her voice echoed loudly against the thick concrete pillars. The muscular man did not listen. He shook the chair violently. "Drop the bag, you stupid girl." Chloe refused. She wrapped her arms completely around the leather material. She tucked her chin down. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. She squeezed her eyes tightly shut. The thin man in the dark hoodie stepped forward. He kicked a loose piece of gravel across the floor. "Just dump her out. We do not have time for this. Someone might drive down here." The muscular man grunted loudly. He shoved the heavy padded armrests forward and completely released his grip. The heavy wheelchair slammed hard against the concrete floor. The sudden impact sent a terrible shockwave straight up Chloe's damaged spine. Pain exploded in her lower back. She cried out loudly. The chair bounced once and then tipped violently to the right side. Chloe hit the cold, oil-stained concrete. Her right shoulder took the brunt of the heavy fall. Her head snapped sideways and struck the hard floor. Bright flashes of light exploded behind her eyes. The heavy metal frame of the wheelchair collapsed partially on top of her motionless legs. The left wheel spun freely in the air above her. She lay there for a long moment. Her ears rang loudly. The smell of old motor oil and damp dust filled her nose. She tried to move her legs to push the heavy chair away. Nothing happened. The familiar, terrifying numbness remained. She felt completely vulnerable on the dirty floor. But her hand still held the brown leather bag securely against her ribs. The muscular man stepped heavily over the fallen wheelchair. He loomed above her like a giant shadow. He reached down and grabbed the thick leather strap of the bag. He pulled hard. Chloe held on. She ignored the sharp pain radiating from her injured shoulder. She ignored the spinning dizziness in her head. She pulled back with every ounce of strength she possessed. The leather strap dug deeply into her palms. "Help!" Chloe screamed at the top of her lungs. "Somebody please help me!" Her voice bounced off the empty cars and thick pillars. It sounded desperate and loud in the massive underground cavern. The thin man looked around nervously. He paced back and forth near the front bumper of the white van. He kept glancing toward the distant exit ramp. "Shut her up right now. Someone is going to hear her yell. Just get the cash and let us get out of here." The muscular man grew deeply frustrated. He placed his heavy steel-toed boot directly on the metal frame of her wheelchair to pin it down securely. He leaned his thick body over her, his face twisted into an ugly mask of pure rage. "You are making a huge mistake," the muscular man hissed. He let go of the leather strap. He reached his thick hand behind his back. When he brought his hand forward again, cold metal glinted sharply in the dim, flickering light of the parking garage. It was a large hunting knife. The blade was long, thick, and wickedly sharp. It caught the pale light from the overhead fluorescent bulbs. Chloe stared directly at the weapon. Her heart hammered violently against her ribs. The cold reality of the sharp blade froze her blood. This was no longer just a simple robbery. This was a direct, immediate threat to her life. "I am done playing games with you," the muscular man said. His rough voice dropped to a deadly, quiet whisper. "You let go of that bag right now, or I will cut your hands right off." Chloe looked from the sharp blade to the man's cold, dead eyes. She saw absolutely no hesitation in him. She saw nothing but absolute cruelty. Her hands trembled violently around the leather bag. She thought about her narrow hospital bed. She thought about the endless, painful physical therapy sessions. She thought about the exact moment the tall doctor told her she might never walk again. She thought about her Uncle Arthur sitting in his comfortable office, waiting for her to fail. She had fought far too hard to surrender her future to a common criminal in a dark basement. "No!" Chloe gasped out loudly. She pulled the bag even tighter against her chest. She curled her upper body into a tight ball on the cold floor to protect the money. She prepared to take the physical damage. The thin man stopped pacing completely. "Are you crazy? Do not do that. Just cut the strap and let us go. We do not need a murder charge today." The muscular man completely ignored his partner. He raised the heavy hunting knife high in the air. The overhead light caught the sharp edge of the blade once more. He took a deep breath. He tightened his grip on the handle. He prepared to strike downward with maximum force. Chloe squeezed her eyes shut tightly. She braced herself for the terrible pain. She held her breath and waited for the deadly impact. In the deep shadows, exactly 30 yards away, Marvin watched the dangerous blade go up. The active-duty Navy SEAL completely abandoned his slow stealth approach. He required pure speed now. He needed to close the distance rapidly before the knife came down. Marvin let out a sharp, loud whistle. It was a specific, high-pitched tactical command. The sound cut through the damp garage air like a fired bullet. The muscular man paused his downward swing. He kept the knife raised high and snapped his head quickly toward the unexpected sound. The thin man spun around wildly to look deep into the dark parking lanes. They did not see the man coming. They saw the animal. Titan did not run like a normal house dog. He launched himself forward with terrifying speed and purpose. His highly powerful back legs pushed off the concrete with explosive force. His thick claws clicked rapidly against the hard floor. He covered the entire distance in a matter of a few short seconds. The 90-pound German Shepherd looked exactly like a dark, silent missile, flying low through the dim parking garage. Chloe kept her eyes tightly closed. She heard the sharp whistle echo. Then she heard the incredibly fast clicking sound approaching her position. She did not know what was happening. She only knew the sharp knife had not hit her yet. She stayed curled in a tight, protective ball. The muscular man realized his fatal mistake far too late. He tried to turn his heavy body fully to face the rapidly incoming threat. He tried desperately to bring the large hunting knife down to defend himself from the animal. He was far too slow. Titan did not slow his momentum before impact. The highly trained military working dog leaped off the hard ground. He flew through the damp air directly toward the muscular man's broad chest, jaws wide open and completely ready for contact. The large hunting knife descended rapidly toward Chloe. She squeezed her eyes shut tightly. She braced her entire body for the terrible, sharp impact of the blade. The cold concrete floor pressed hard against her side. She held her breath in the damp, heavy air of the underground parking garage. She pulled the brown leather bag closer to her chest, trying desperately to shield the precious cash inside. A sudden, massive blur of black and tan fur shot through the dim light of the parking level. Titan did not simply run toward the threat. The 90-pound German Shepherd launched his highly muscular body like a precision-guided missile. He covered the final few yards of empty space entirely in the air. The heavy, muscular attacker holding the knife never saw the massive military dog coming from the deep shadows. The man kept his focus entirely on the disabled woman on the floor. The physical collision was incredibly violent. Titan struck the attacker squarely in the center of his broad chest. The kinetic energy of a large working dog moving at full sprint hit the man with the massive force of a speeding vehicle. A loud, heavy thud echoed sharply off the thick concrete pillars of level P3. The air rushed out of the attacker's lungs in a sudden sharp gasp. The man's heavy boots instantly lost all traction on the slippery, oil-stained floor. He stumbled backward, completely losing his balance. However, he kept his thick fingers wrapped tightly around the handle of the large hunting knife. He raised his arm wildly in the air, trying to maintain his downward strike, hoping blindly to stab whatever heavy object had just slammed into his body. Titan possessed the elite reflexes of a highly trained combat veteran. He saw the sharp metal blade moving. While still suspended in the air, the large dog twisted his powerful neck instantly. He opened his strong jaws wide. He ignored the man's chest and aimed directly for the primary weapon threat. Titan's teeth clamped down violently onto the man's right forearm. The dog bit straight through the thick, tough material of the black leather jacket. He found the solid muscle and bone underneath the sleeve. The muscular attacker let out a piercing scream. It was a high-pitched sound of pure, unexpected agony. The loud scream bounced off the painted walls and filled the entire empty garage with chaotic noise. The immense, crushing pressure of the dog's powerful jaws instantly neutralized the man's arm. Sharp pain shot directly from his wrist, straight up to his shoulder joint. His thick fingers went completely numb in a fraction of a second. The heavy hunting knife slipped easily from his useless, paralyzed grip. The metal weapon dropped straight down. It hit the hard concrete floor right next to the fallen wheelchair with a sharp, ringing clatter. The heavy knife bounced once on the hard surface. It skidded quickly across the rough floor, scraping loudly against the stone. It finally slid completely under the front bumper of the customized white van, coming to a complete stop far out of anyone's immediate reach. Chloe kept her eyes shut for 3 long seconds. She heard the massive physical impact. She heard the terrible echoing scream above her head. She heard the distinct metallic sound of the heavy knife hitting the ground and sliding away into the darkness. She did not feel any sharp pain. She did not feel the cold blade pierce her skin. She slowly opened her eyes. She fully expected to see the cruel, scarred face of the attacker looming directly over her. She expected the worst possible outcome. Instead, she saw absolute chaos. She saw a massive, terrifyingly beautiful dog pinning her attacker back heavily against the side door of her white van. The dark fur of the animal blended easily with the deep shadows of the parking garage. The dog moved with calculated, terrifying efficiency. He did not bark wildly. He simply held on with absolute determination. Chloe immediately realized she was safe from the deadly knife. She reacted entirely on pure survival instinct. She ignored the dull, throbbing ache radiating rapidly through her injured right shoulder. She placed her left hand flat on the dirty concrete and pushed her upper body up slightly. She dragged her hips backward across the cold floor, moving her legs carefully out from under the collapsed metal frame of her heavy wheelchair. She pulled her brown leather bag securely against her stomach. Her heart hammered wildly against her ribs. Her breath came in short, rapid gasps. The muscular attacker fought back with everything he had left. He slammed his heavy back against the side of the white van. The large vehicle rocked slightly on its suspension system. He cursed loudly at the dog. He raised his free left hand and formed a tight, heavy fist. He swung his arm hard and punched Titan solidly in the side of the ribs. The heavy blow landed with a loud thud. Titan did not flinch. The military working dog did not make a single sound of pain. He did not loosen his crushing grip on the man's bleeding arm by a single fraction of an inch. Titan reacted to the hard punch by simply planting his thick back paws firmly onto the slippery concrete floor. He lowered his center of gravity completely. He pulled his large head backward with immense, terrifying physical strength. The muscular man lost his footing entirely. The dog dragged the heavy man violently forward, pulling him completely away from the side of the white van. The man fell hard onto his knees. The harsh impact of his kneecaps hitting the solid stone floor echoed sharply in the large open space. He cried out in terrible pain again as Titan shook his head aggressively from side to side, tearing the thick leather sleeve of the jacket to shreds. The attacker tried frantically to grab the dog's thick collar with his free hand. He tried desperately to pull the heavy animal off his arm. His fingers found only thick, solid muscle and dense fur. He could not move the 90-pound dog at all. The man realized very quickly that he was no longer the dangerous predator in this dark parking garage. He was completely trapped by a highly superior force. He was fighting a relentless machine made entirely of muscle and teeth. Chloe watched the entire violent struggle from her safe position on the floor. She watched the massive man crying out loudly on his knees. She watched the large dog holding him securely in place. She felt a sudden rush of incredible relief wash over her trembling body. The cash inside her brown leather bag was entirely safe. Her upcoming spinal surgery was safe. Her entire future was safe. But the extreme danger in the garage was not completely over. A few yards away, the thin man in the dark hoodie stood perfectly still. He watched the violent scene unfold in absolute shock. He had backed away rapidly when the giant dog first flew out of the dark shadows. He stood trembling violently near a thick concrete column, staring with wide, panicked eyes at his partner, kneeling on the floor in agony. The thin man looked rapidly from his screaming partner to the disabled woman, clutching her bag tightly on the ground. He realized their simple robbery plan had fallen apart completely in a matter of seconds. He saw the heavy hunting knife lying completely useless under the van. He gritted his teeth hard. He realized he needed to help his partner escape immediately. He quickly searched the dim parking garage area for any kind of weapon to use against the massive animal. He needed something very heavy to strike the dog and free his friend. He spotted a thick metal tire iron lying discarded near a nearby concrete parking block. He stepped forward quickly and grabbed the cold metal bar. His eyes locked directly onto the dog's back. He raised the weapon high and prepared to attack. The thin man in the dark hoodie held the heavy metal tire iron high above his head. His hands shook violently. He took a deep, jagged breath and stepped toward the massive German shepherd. He aimed a vicious downward swing directly at the dog's exposed back. He intended to crack the animal's spine and free his partner from the painful bite. He never completed the heavy swing. Marvin stepped rapidly out of the dark shadows. He moved with absolute terrifying silence. He did not yell a loud warning. He did not hesitate for a single second. The active-duty Navy SEAL closed the final few feet in a fraction of a moment. His highly athletic body moved fluidly. He intercepted the attack before the heavy metal bar could begin its dangerous downward arc. Marvin raised his left arm and blocked the thin man's wrists with brutal force. Bone smacked hard against bone. The thin man let out a sharp gasp of shock and sudden pain. The intense physical impact completely stopped his forward momentum. The harsh vibration from the block sent a painful shockwave straight up the attacker's thin arms. Marvin immediately followed up the block with a highly calculated counterattack. He did not fight wildly or swing his fists blindly in the dark. He used precise, devastating military techniques perfected over years of intense combat training. He stepped aggressively into the man's personal space. He grabbed the front collar of the thin man's dark hoodie with his strong right hand. He pulled the attacker violently forward, completely destroying the man's center of gravity. At the exact same time, Marvin drove his right knee upward with explosive speed. The hard, bony knee strike landed solidly directly into the soft center of the thin man's stomach. The air rushed out of the attacker's lungs with a loud, wet wheeze. The man's eyes bulged wide in absolute shock. His tight grip on the metal tire iron failed instantly. The heavy weapon slipped rapidly from his fingers and hit the concrete floor with a very loud, ringing clang. Marvin did not stop his physical assault. In close-quarters combat, hesitation usually meant death. He maintained his tight, crushing grip on the man's hoodie. He pivoted his hips sharply and threw the attacker aggressively to the side. The thin man flew through the damp air and crashed heavily against a thick concrete pillar. The attacker slid rapidly down the rough concrete surface and hit the dirty floor in a crumpled, broken heap. He gasped desperately for air. He clutched his stomach tightly with both hands. He tried weakly to crawl away, but his legs completely refused to work. The single, powerful tactical strike had completely incapacitated him. Marvin stood tall over the fallen man. His breathing remained perfectly steady and calm. His dark eyes scanned the immediate parking area for any additional hidden threats. He looked behind the thick pillars and the parked cars. He found absolutely nothing else. He looked over at Titan. The 90-pound German shepherd still held the muscular man firmly pinned against the hard ground. The muscular attacker had stopped fighting back entirely. He simply lay flat on the cold concrete, crying loudly and clutching his severely bleeding right arm. Titan stood squarely over him, holding his jaw position steady, completely ready to apply significantly more pressure if the dangerous man tried to move his body again. Titan let out a low, rumbling growl of acknowledgement. He did not release his tight grip. His dark eyes remained fixed entirely on the man's sweaty face. The dog's sharp teeth remained sunk deeply into the thick leather sleeve, ensuring the man could not pull a secondary weapon or attempt a sudden, desperate escape. The sheer terrifying presence of the large animal kept the large man completely paralyzed with intense fear. "Good boy," Marvin said quietly. His voice carried a calm, commanding tone that echoed lightly in the garage. "Hold him exactly right there." Marvin turned his complete attention to the disabled woman on the floor. He walked quickly over to Chloe. He kept his hands open and highly visible to show he meant absolutely no harm. He crouched down slowly beside her. Chloe stared directly at him with wide, terrified eyes. She held her brown leather bag incredibly tightly against her stomach. Her heart pounded furiously against her ribs. She looked at the tall, athletic man with short, dark hair. She saw the calm, highly focused expression on his face. She realized very quickly he was the one who had commanded the massive dog. He was her entirely unexpected savior. "Are you hurt?" Marvin asked. His voice sounded surprisingly gentle in the cold, heavily echoing garage. Chloe swallowed hard. Her throat felt extremely dry. She shook her head slowly side to side. "My right shoulder aches a little bit, but I am okay. They did not cut me." Marvin nodded once. His sharp eyes quickly assessed her physical condition. He noted the heavy manual wheelchair lying completely on its side nearby. He noted her motionless legs resting awkwardly on the concrete. He understood her extreme physical vulnerability in this dark, isolated place. "I am going to help you sit up," Marvin said clearly. "Then I will get your chair right side up. Is that all right with you?" Chloe nodded again quickly. "Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for this." Marvin reached out carefully. He placed his strong hands lightly beneath her arms. He lifted her upper body smoothly and easily from the floor. He did not treat her like a fragile glass doll, but he moved her with deliberate, respectful care. He propped her up safely against the front bumper of her customized white van. Chloe kept her tight grip on the brown leather bag. She watched closely as Marvin stepped over to her overturned wheelchair. He grabbed the heavy metal frame and lifted the entire chair rapidly with one single hand. He set it perfectly upright on its 4 rubber wheels. He quickly checked the handbrakes and inspected the metal frame for any serious physical damage. The sturdy medical equipment appeared entirely intact. Marvin rolled the chair closely over to her left side. He crouched down next to her again. "I can lift you directly into the seat," Marvin offered kindly. "Put your arms firmly around my neck." Chloe hesitated for a brief second. She usually hated asking strangers for any physical help. She deeply hated feeling helpless. But the cold concrete floor sent a deep chill through her entire body, and the 2 dangerous men still remained nearby. She nodded and reached up immediately. She wrapped her arms tightly around Marvin's thick neck. She smelled the faint scent of clean soap and worn leather on his tactical jacket. Marvin wrapped his arms securely around her waist. He lifted her entire body weight completely effortlessly. He moved her smoothly through the damp air and placed her gently down onto the padded seat of her wheelchair. Chloe immediately adjusted her legs on the black plastic footplates. She smoothed down her blue sweater. She placed her brown leather bag securely back onto her lap, wrapping both arms around it protectively. She let out a long, shuddering breath. The intense rush of adrenaline slowly began to fade from her nervous system. She felt a deep, overwhelming exhaustion wash over her entire body. Her muscles ached deeply. Her damaged spine throbbed with a dull, familiar pain. Marvin stood up straight. He looked down at her pale face and offered a small, highly reassuring nod. His dark eyes showed a genuine sense of protective care. "You are completely safe now," Marvin said firmly. "I promise you, they are not going to hurt you or take your property." Chloe looked past him into the dim, flickering light of the parking level. She saw the heavy, muscular man sobbing loudly on the dirty floor under the terrifying, watchful eyes of the dark combat dog. She saw the tall, thin man groaning heavily against the rough concrete pillar, completely unable to stand up. She realized exactly how incredibly close she had come to losing everything. "Who are you?" Chloe asked. Her voice trembled slightly. "Where did you come from?" Marvin did not smile. He simply pulled a thick plastic zip tie from the deep pocket of his gray tactical jacket. "I am just a guy walking his dog," Marvin replied. "Now stay right here. I need to secure these 2 completely before I call the local police." Marvin turned around and walked confidently toward the groaning men. Chloe watched his broad back. She watched the incredible, disciplined teamwork between the silent man and the massive dog. She realized she had just witnessed something truly extraordinary in the dark basement. The parking garage remained dark and damp. Marvin walked toward the thin man slumped against the concrete pillar. The attacker held his stomach and groaned loudly. Marvin did not show any sympathy. He moved with strict military precision. He grabbed the man's arms and pulled them roughly behind his back. He wrapped a thick plastic zip tie around the man's wrists. He pulled the plastic strip tight. It made a sharp clicking sound that echoed in the quiet basement. Marvin knelt and checked the man's pockets. He patted down the dark hoodie and the dirty jeans. He found a cheap cell phone, a lighter, and a set of keys. He tossed the items onto the concrete floor. He patted the man's ankles to check for hidden knives or small firearms. He found nothing else. The man posed no further threat. "Stay down," Marvin ordered. "Do not move a muscle." The thin man nodded weakly. He kept his eyes closed and focused entirely on breathing. Marvin turned his attention to the muscular man. The large attacker still lay flat on the cold floor. Titan stood squarely over him. The 90-pound dog kept his sharp teeth firmly locked onto the shredded leather sleeve. The man had stopped fighting entirely. He only whimpered softly in pain, completely broken by the animal's immense strength. Marvin approached his dog. He placed his hand gently on Titan's thick, muscular neck. "Titan, release," Marvin commanded clearly. The massive German shepherd opened his jaws immediately. He stepped backward but did not take his dark eyes off the attacker. Titan sat down on the hard floor. His ears remained fully alert. He stayed fully prepared to strike again if the man tried anything foolish. The muscular man grabbed his bleeding right arm. He curled his body into a tight ball on the dirty ground. Marvin grabbed the man's left arm and pulled it firmly behind his back. The attacker lacked the physical strength to resist the movement. Marvin secured another heavy zip tie around the man's thick wrists. He pulled the plastic band extremely tight. "I am going to check your pockets for weapons," Marvin said in a cold, flat voice. "If you try to fight me, I will let the dog bite you again. Do you understand?" The man shook his head rapidly. He kept his face pressed against the stone. "No weapons. Just take the money. Let us go. Please." Marvin ignored the plea completely. He patted down the heavy leather jacket. He found a thick wallet in the inside breast pocket. He patted down the man's denim jeans. He felt a square, flat object in the left front pocket. It did not feel like a weapon. It felt like thick paper. Marvin reached inside the pocket. He pulled out a small, plain brown envelope. The envelope felt thick and heavy. He flipped it over in his bare hand. It had no writing or markings on the outside. He opened the paper flap carefully. He reached inside and pulled out a thick stack of glossy photographs. Marvin stood up straight. He held the photos directly under the flickering fluorescent light overhead. He examined the top picture closely. His jaw tightened instantly. His combat instincts flared deep in his chest. The entire situation had just changed completely. Marvin walked slowly back to the customized white van. Chloe sat quietly in her wheelchair. She held her brown leather bag incredibly tightly. She watched Marvin approach her with the stack of photos in his hand. "I checked them both for additional weapons," Marvin said. "They are completely secure now. I will call the police dispatch in a minute. But I need to show you something first." Chloe looked up at his serious face. She felt a new wave of dark anxiety wash over her. Her hands gripped the leather strap harder. "What is it? Did you find another knife?" "No," Marvin replied. He handed her the stack of glossy photographs. "I found these in the big guy's front pocket." Chloe took the photos with trembling fingers. She looked down at the top image. All the air left her lungs instantly. A freezing chill ran straight down her damaged spine. The photos showed Chloe sitting alone in her wheelchair. She was waiting outside a local grocery store. She wore a bright red winter jacket. She remembered that specific day very clearly. It happened 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday afternoon. The low camera angle suggested the photographer sat hidden inside a parked car across the busy street. She moved the top photo to the back of the stack. She looked closely at the second picture. It showed her rolling down the long sidewalk near her apartment building. It was taken from a high angle, possibly from a second-floor window or a nearby rooftop. She looked at the third photo. It showed her entering the front doors of the physical therapy clinic last Thursday. The image quality was extremely sharp. The photographer had used a high-quality telephoto lens to capture her face perfectly in the bright sunlight. "They took pictures of me," Chloe whispered. Her voice shook with pure, unfiltered terror. "They followed me around the city for days." Marvin crouched down next to her wheelchair again. He looked directly at the glossy photos in her shaking hands. "They did not just decide to rob you today on a random whim," Marvin stated firmly. "Random muggers do not spend weeks taking surveillance photos of a target. They do not track your daily movements. This takes considerable time. This takes dedicated planning. They targeted you specifically." Chloe stared blindly at the photos. Her mind raced through the past few weeks. She thought about the massive amount of cash inside her leather bag. She thought about the highly complex legal process of bypassing her trust fund restrictions. Only 2 people in the entire world knew she planned to withdraw the cash today. The bank manager knew, and 1 other person knew. "I do not understand," Chloe said. She struggled deeply to process the dark reality of the situation. "Why would they stalk me like an animal? I do not have anything valuable at home. The only valuable thing I have is this cash today." "Exactly," Marvin said. He pointed a firm finger at the photos. "They knew all about the cash. They knew your exact schedule. They knew you would come down to this empty garage today. They planned this exact ambush to strip you of your funds." Chloe felt sick to her stomach. The damp, oily air of the garage suddenly felt incredibly suffocating. She looked over at the 2 men tied up on the concrete floor. They were not just desperate criminals looking for a quick score. They were professional hired thugs. "Someone paid them good money," Marvin continued. He analyzed the evidence with cold, calculated logic. "Someone hired them to follow you. Someone wanted to make absolutely sure you lost that bag today." Chloe closed her eyes tightly. The terrible truth hit her physical body like a heavy blow. The bank manager had no logical reason to steal her money. He managed millions of dollars every single day. The only person who desperately wanted her to fail was the person who controlled her entire life. "My uncle," Chloe whispered. The words tasted like dry ash in her mouth. Marvin tilted his head slightly. "Who is that?" "Arthur. My uncle," Chloe explained. Her voice grew significantly stronger. A deep, burning anger quickly replaced the cold fear in her chest. "He controls my family trust fund. He flatly refused to pay for my spinal surgery. He wants me to stay in this chair forever, so he can keep total control of the estate money. I found a legal way to bypass his authority and get the cash myself. He found out about it yesterday afternoon." Marvin looked at the photos. He looked at the disabled woman. He understood the entire ugly picture now. It was not a simple robbery. It was a deliberate, cruel sabotage ordered by a greedy family member. "We need to call the police right now," Marvin said. He pulled his cell phone from his tactical jacket pocket. "And we need to make absolutely sure those two men talk to the detectives. We need a full confession." Chloe gripped the photos tightly. She looked at the men on the floor. She realized the terrible battle was not over yet. It had just moved from the dark parking garage to the bright lights of a legal courtroom. The concrete floor of the underground garage felt much colder as the dark reality of the situation settled over them. Marvin tucked the thick stack of glossy photographs safely back into his gray tactical jacket. He turned his attention fully to the heavy muscular man tied up on the ground. The attacker lay perfectly still. His heavily bleeding right arm throbbed visibly under the tight plastic zip tie. Marvin walked over and crouched down directly in front of the man's sweaty face. Titan stepped up right next to Marvin. The massive 90-pound German shepherd let out a very low, continuous growl. The deep sound vibrated heavily in the damp air. "You have a choice to make right now," Marvin said. His voice was incredibly flat and entirely devoid of any emotion. "The police are coming rapidly. They will find the hunting knife under the van. They will find the surveillance photographs in your pocket. They will charge you with armed robbery and attempted murder. You will spend the rest of your natural life inside a tiny concrete box." The muscular man swallowed hard. Sweat dripped steadily down his scarred forehead. "I did not try to murder anyone down here. We just wanted the bag of cash." "You raised a deadly weapon at a disabled woman," Marvin corrected him sharply. "The security cameras upstairs recorded you following her into the elevator. We have the physical evidence of your stalking. A jury will not show you a single ounce of mercy." Marvin leaned a fraction of an inch closer. His dark eyes locked directly onto the attacker's fearful face. He utilized the precise psychological pressure he had learned during military interrogations. "But the police do not need to know you acted alone today," Marvin continued smoothly. "If you tell me exactly who hired you, you become a cooperating witness. You trade the big boss for a significantly shorter sentence. If you choose to stay completely silent, you take the entire heavy fall by yourself." The thin man in the dark hoodie groaned loudly from his uncomfortable position against the concrete pillar. "Tell him, Marcus. Tell him everything right now. I am absolutely not going to federal prison for that rich guy." Marcus, the muscular attacker, glared angrily at his injured partner, but his fierce resistance faded very quickly. The intense, burning pain in his bitten arm broke his tough exterior. He looked at the massive military dog standing just inches away. He looked at the cold, calculating eyes of the combat veteran. He realized he had absolutely no leverage left in this fight. "He paid us $10,000, Marcus muttered. His rough voice sounded incredibly weak and totally defeated. "He gave us $5,000 in cash up front. He promised another $5,000 when we delivered the brown bag to him tonight." Chloe sat perfectly still in her wheelchair. Her knuckles turned stark white as she gripped her brown leather bag. She leaned her upper body forward slightly to hear every single word echoing in the quiet garage. "Who paid you?" Marvin demanded loudly. "Give me a name right now." Marcus hesitated for one final second. Titan snapped his powerful jaws together once. The loud, sharp clack of the dog's large teeth made the heavy attacker flinch violently on the floor. "Arthur," Marcus blurted out quickly. "His name is Arthur. I do not know his last name. He drives a silver luxury sedan. He always wears highly expensive tailored suits." Chloe gasped loudly. The air completely left her lungs. Hearing her own uncle's name spoken aloud by a violent criminal made the nightmare absolutely real. Her own family member had paid these dangerous men to attack her in a dark basement. "How did he contact you?" Marvin asked. He kept his strict focus entirely on gathering actionable intelligence. "We met him at a dive bar downtown exactly 2 weeks ago," Marcus explained rapidly. "He knew we did dirty collection work for local gangs. He gave us the brown envelope of photographs. He told us exactly where the girl lived and where she did her daily physical therapy. Yesterday afternoon, he called us on a burner phone. He gave us the bank location and the exact time of the withdrawal. He said she would have a massive amount of cash stored in a brown bag." Marvin stood up slowly. "What was his exact instruction? Did he tell you to just take the money?" Marcus looked down at the oily concrete. He actively avoided looking anywhere near Chloe. "He told us to make it look exactly like a random mugging gone completely wrong. He said if she got physically hurt in the process, he would pay us a large extra bonus. He wanted her terrified. He wanted her completely dependent on him forever." A heavy, terrible silence fell over the parking garage. The flickering fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. Chloe felt a hot tear trace a rapid path down her pale cheek. She did not wipe it away. The deep betrayal cut much sharper than the hunting knife ever could. Arthur did not just want to keep her money. He actively wanted her to suffer physical pain. He wanted to break her spirit entirely so she would never challenge his absolute authority over the family trust fund again. Marvin pulled his cell phone securely from his tactical pocket. He dialed the emergency number quickly. He kept his sharp eyes securely on the two tied-up men on the floor. "Yes, I need armed police and medical units dispatched to the First National Bank underground parking garage, level P3. Marvin spoke clearly and calmly into the phone. "I have 2 armed suspects successfully detained. One suspect requires immediate medical attention for a severe dog bite. The primary victim is completely safe and unharmed." He ended the call and slipped the phone away. He walked quickly back over to Chloe. He knelt directly beside her wheelchair. He noticed the tears shining brightly in her eyes. He did not offer any empty, meaningless platitudes. He treated her exactly like a strong fellow survivor. "You have the full truth now," Marvin said quietly. "The police will arrest those 2 men today. When the detectives hear this recorded confession, they will go straight to your uncle's house." He left a clear paper trail. Greedy criminals always make mistakes. Chloe took a deep, shaky breath. She looked down at the brown leather bag resting safely on her lap. The cash inside represented her upcoming spinal surgery. It represented her highly anticipated physical freedom. Arthur had tried absolutely everything in his power to steal that freedom away from her. He had failed completely. "He is going to prison," Chloe stated firmly. The heavy fear in her chest began to dissolve rapidly. A new, highly powerful resolve quickly took its place. Arthur is going to lose the family trust. He is going to lose his luxurious life. He is going to lose everything he values. "Yes, he is," Marvin agreed. "You fought back bravely. You held on to your bag against 2 armed men. You survived the brutal ambush. Now you must let the legal system finish the fight for you." Chloe looked at the tall soldier. She looked at the incredibly loyal military dog sitting calmly by his side. They had stepped out of the dark shadows exactly when she needed a true miracle. They had saved her life and her future without asking for a single thing in return. In the far distance, the faint, high-pitched wail of police sirens began to echo loudly through the city streets above them. The authorities were finally arriving. The dark, terrifying ordeal in the underground garage was rapidly coming to an end. Chloe sat up very straight in her heavy wheelchair. She felt mentally stronger than she had felt in 2 entire years. She was completely ready to face the dawn. The wail of police sirens grew incredibly loud. The sound bounced off the thick concrete walls of the underground parking garage. Flashing red and blue lights suddenly painted the dark basement. 3 bright white police cruisers sped down the entrance ramp. They screeched to a sudden halt near the customized van. 6 uniformed officers jumped out of the vehicles quickly. They held their weapons ready. They scanned the dimly lit area. "Police!" a tall sergeant shouted loudly. "Show me your hands right now." Marvin did not make any sudden movements. He stood perfectly still under the flickering fluorescent light. He raised his empty hands slowly into the air. Titan sat perfectly still beside his left leg. The massive military dog did not bark at the arriving officers. He simply watched them with calm, alert eyes. "I am the caller," Marvin stated in a clear, commanding voice. "I am an active-duty Navy SEAL. My military identification is in my left breast pocket. I have 2 armed suspects fully secured on the concrete floor. One suspect has a severe dog bite on his right arm. The primary victim is safely seated in her wheelchair by the white van." The sergeant lowered his weapon slightly. He signaled his team to advance carefully. 2 officers quickly approached the thin man in the dark hoodie. They grabbed his zip-tied arms and hauled him roughly to his feet. 2 other officers approached Marcus. The heavily muscular man whimpered continuously. The heavy bleeding from his right arm had soaked completely through his torn leather sleeve. "Call a paramedic unit down here immediately," the sergeant ordered into his shoulder radio. He looked down at Marcus. "We need a medical transport for this suspect." Marvin lowered his hands. He reached carefully into his gray tactical jacket. He pulled out the thick stack of glossy surveillance photographs. He handed them directly to the approaching sergeant. "You will find a large hunting knife kicked under the front bumper of that white van," Marvin reported smoothly. These photographs were found in the muscular suspect's front pocket. They depict the female victim over the past 2 weeks. The suspects also provided a full verbal confession. They were hired to ambush her today and steal a large sum of cash. The man who hired them is her uncle. His name is Arthur. The sergeant took the photos. He flipped through them quickly. His expression hardened into a tight frown. He looked from the professional photos to the disabled woman sitting quietly in her chair. He understood the severe gravity of the situation instantly. This was a highly organized crime. "We will secure the weapon immediately," the sergeant said. "Thank you for your fast action. You likely saved her life today." A bright yellow ambulance rolled slowly down the concrete ramp. 2 paramedics jumped out with a heavy medical bag. 1 paramedic rushed over to treat the dog bite. The second paramedic, a kind-looking woman with blonde hair, walked directly over to Chloe. "Are you injured, miss?" the female paramedic asked gently. She shined a small penlight into Chloe's eyes to check for a concussion. "My right shoulder hit the ground hard," Chloe answered honestly. "My back aches deeply, but I am okay. I just want to go home now." The paramedic gently pressed along Chloe's shoulder joint. "Nothing feels broken. You have a deep bruise forming. You should definitely follow up with your primary doctor tomorrow. But you are stable." A young female police officer approached Chloe with a small notepad. She took a detailed statement. Chloe did not stutter or hesitate. She gripped her brown leather bag securely. She spoke with a newly found, powerful confidence. She detailed her Uncle Arthur's cruel control over her trust fund. She explained her plan to withdraw the cash for her spinal surgery. She recounted the terrifying ambush in the dark shadows. "We are dispatching a detective unit to your uncle's residence right now," the female officer assured her firmly. "With the physical photos and the direct confession from these men, we have enough probable cause to bring him in for intense questioning tonight. He will not bother you again." Chloe nodded slowly. A massive weight lifted completely off her chest. Arthur had tried to trap her in a permanent state of fear. Instead, he had trapped himself in a federal prison cell. The police loaded the 2 attackers into the back of the cruisers. The ambulance doors closed securely. The flashing lights began to pull away slowly, heading back up the concrete ramp toward the bright city streets. The large underground garage suddenly felt very quiet again. But the silence did not feel oppressive anymore. It felt incredibly peaceful. Marvin walked over to the customized white van. He pressed the small button on Chloe's keychain. The side doors slid open smoothly. A metal automated ramp extended down to the concrete floor with a quiet mechanical hum. Chloe rolled her wheelchair up the metal ramp. She secured her chair tightly into the specialized driving lock behind the steering wheel. She placed her brown leather bag safely onto the empty passenger seat. The massive amount of cash remained completely untouched. Her upcoming spinal surgery was entirely secure. Her bright future belonged entirely to her now. She turned her head to look out the open van door. Marvin stood patiently on the concrete. Titan sat dutifully by his side. "I do not know how to properly thank you," Chloe said softly, her voice filled with deep, genuine emotion. "You risked your own life for a complete stranger in a dark basement. You gave me my entire life back today." Marvin offered a very small, respectful nod. He placed his strong hand gently on Titan's head. "You fought back hard before we ever arrived," Marvin replied calmly. "You held on to your bag. You refused to surrender to bad men. You saved yourself today. Titan and I simply provided a little extra backup." Chloe looked at the massive German shepherd. She remembered the terrifying, powerful way the dog had protected her from the deadly knife. "He is an incredible animal," Chloe whispered. "He is the best partner I have ever had," Marvin agreed. "Good luck with your surgery. Fight hard in physical therapy. Do not let anyone tell you what you cannot do." "I will not," Chloe promised fiercely. "Never again." Marvin stepped back from the van. Chloe pressed the button on her dashboard. The automatic doors slid shut with a solid click. She started the powerful engine. She drove the van slowly toward the exit ramp. She drove up the steep incline and emerged from the dark underground garage. The bright afternoon sun of Dallas hit her windshield instantly. The sky above was a brilliant, clear blue. Chloe squinted against the beautiful light. She felt the warm sun on her face. She smiled brightly for the first time in 2 years. The long, terrible night was finally over. The true dawn of her new life had just begun. Sometimes the greatest battles we face are not fought on distant shores, but in the quiet, dark moments of our everyday lives. Chloe's story is a powerful reminder that true strength does not always come from physical capability. It comes from an unbreakable spirit and the fierce determination to protect your own future. Her uncle Arthur allowed greed to completely blind him, and his cruelty became his ultimate downfall. Meanwhile, Marvin and his loyal dog Titan showed us that help often arrives exactly when we need it most. From my perspective, they remind us that angels do not always have wings. Sometimes they wear tactical jackets and have 4 paws. They prove that there are still good, fiercely protective souls ready to stand up against injustice. May God bless all the brave people who are fighting their own unseen battles every single day, and may He always send protectors to those in deep need. If you believe that the light of justice will always conquer the deepest shadows, please type Amen in the comments below. If this story inspired you today, please share it with someone who needs a reminder to stay strong. Leave a comment with your thoughts on Marvin and Titan's heroic actions, and please subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about courage, loyalty, and justice.